Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick things off with a tale of a simple Dollar General run that turned into a masterclass in shutting down a nosy Karen. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Dollar store Karen got a lesson in minding her business. I just needed some zip ties, that's it. Quick stop at Dollar General, in and out, no drama. My dog, who goes just about everywhere with me, jumped in the truck with me like always. It was a mild day, around 76 degrees, not too hot, not too cool. I left the AC running and cracked all 4 windows halfway for airflow. I wasn't even planning to be in the store for more than 2 minutes. Turns out, I didn't even make it a full minute. I walked in, found the zip ties, and was heading back out when I saw her stationed right in front of my car like she was guarding Buckingham Palace. The moment I saw her posture, arms crossed, foot tapping, that permanent disapproving scowl, I just knew. One of those. A sidewalk warrior, a full-blown unsolicited, opinion-having, personal space-invading, self-proclaimed protector of all things she barely understands. She opened with, "Is this your car?" Now, I knew where this was going, but I was already in the mood, so I decided to have a little fun. I walked down the driver's side slowly, checked the mirror, looked under the car, walked around to the back as if inspecting the license plate like I'd just seen the vehicle for the first time. Finally, I returned to her and said, "Yes, ma'am, it appears to be." Then she followed up, "Is that your dog in the vehicle?" So again, I gave her the full show. Walked back to the car, peeked in, whistled, patted my dog on the head, who, by the way, was chilling out in the cool air, tail wagging. I looked back at her and said, "Yep, that's my dog." That's when the floodgates opened. She launched into an unsolicited tirade about how irresponsible I was, how cruel it was to leave a dog in a car, how I was an awful pet owner, the whole script. I let her go on for a minute before calmly telling her, "Ma'am, I think you're jumping into something you really don't want to be a part of. Might be best for you to just move on." But nope, that lit the fuse. She puffed up and snapped, "I'm calling the police." I smiled and said, "Please do." And then, because I'd already decided I wasn't going to let her ruin my mood, I tried to give her one final out. I said in the calmest, nicest voice I could muster, "Ma'am, you've injected yourself into my life completely uninvited. If you were genuinely concerned or needed help, I'd be the first to offer it. But that's not what this is. You saw something you didn't like, and instead of asking questions or using common sense, you jumped straight to outrage. You think your way of life is the only way. But that's just not for me, Karen." Her eyes got wide. "What did you call me?" Now, here's the part I'm still proud of. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I thought calling you Karen was better than telling you I thought you were a C word." Her jaw dropped. She looked like she'd just been slapped with a frozen fish. Completely stunned. While she stood there processing it, I got into my vehicle, rolled the windows up, gave my dog a biscuit, and drove off. No sirens, no police, no lecture. Just me, my zip ties, and my dog cruising away with the windows down and the AC humming. And you know what? It still feels good today. I get that some people mean well, and I'm all for protecting animals, calling out abuse, raising awareness. But this wasn't that. This was performative righteousness. Someone with nothing better to do, looking for a problem where there wasn't one. My dog's better cared for than most people treat their kids. He's got vet records, microchips, more toys than I care to admit, and enough love to last him a lifetime. But what really bothered me about this Karen wasn't just the false accusation, it was the assumption that she knew better. That my truck, my dog, my 5-minute errand were her business to police. Well, not today, Karen. Today was the day I reminded her that not every stranger is going to stand there and take the nonsense. And some of us come with sharper words than you expect. Honestly, I'd have done the same. Give her enough rope to hang herself, then drive away knowing you're the responsible pet owner and she's just someone looking for drama. Cheers to you and your well-cared-for pup for schooling that Karen without breaking a sweat. And our second story. Park and handicap illegally? Pay $2,000. Back when I lived in an apartment complex, there was this guy, let's call him Steve, who thought he was God's gift to luxury living. He drove a high-end SUV, wore designer sunglasses even in the shade, and had that smug rich kid energy that made your teeth itch. Steve had a bad habit that immediately rubbed everyone the wrong way. He constantly parked in the complex's handicap parking spot using his elderly grandmother's handicap placard. And no, Steve was not disabled. He admitted this to me himself the first time we ever talked. He noticed my car, struck up a conversation, and started bragging about his vehicle, casually dropping, "Yeah, I use my grandma's tag. People can't legally ask because of HIPAA." Yes, he actually said HIPAA, like the federal medical privacy law protected his right to be an entitled jerk. I brought it up with the apartment office. They said there was nothing they could do since he had a valid placard displayed. They couldn't legally ask questions, and I suppose they didn't care enough to try, so Steve continued stealing that parking space every day, smiling like he was clever for it. As time went on, Steve's true personality really started to show. He'd blast music at the pool from a Bluetooth speaker loud enough to drown out your thoughts. He once bragged about hitting 120 miles per hour on the freeway just to see if the speed limiter kicked in. When asked what he did for work, he smirked and said he helped out at his dad's law firm. A trust fund kid with zero accountability. Every time I saw his SUV in the handicap space, that smug placard dangling from the rearview mirror, it gnawed at me a little more. I'm not someone who gets fired up easily, but something about his unapologetic abuse of that tag, especially when others in the complex actually needed those spaces, really ticked me off. So I came up with a quiet, slow burn plan. Nothing illegal. Over the course of 3 months, usually late at night when things were quiet, I'd let out a small amount of air from one of Steve's tires. Just enough to lower the pressure and trip the sensor, but never enough to cause damage or leave him stranded. I rotated which tire it was each time, skipped days and even weeks to keep it unpredictable. The goal wasn't to destroy anything, it was to mess with his head. About 2 months into this little operation, I bumped into him again. He looked frustrated and started venting about how his tire pressure warning light kept going off and how he'd already replaced all 4 sensors because the dealership couldn't figure out the issue. It had cost him around $2,000. I did my best to act sympathetic, but inside I was barely holding in the laughter. "Man, that's crazy. You'd think they'd find the problem by now," I said, keeping my face straight. He shook his head and muttered something about switching dealers. After that, I stopped. Mission accomplished. The smug jerk was now out a couple grand and probably still thinks to this day that tire pressure sensors are the biggest scam in automotive history. Every time I walked by his SUV, still illegally parked in that handicap space, I couldn't help but smile a little. Not because I changed him, people like that rarely change, but because I got my own little victory. Quiet, harmless, satisfying. Sometimes karma just needs a little encouragement. Excellent pettiness. I'd start doing it again after a month or two so he thinks the new sensor went out. Those placards are registered to the person they're issued to. Cops can run the placard against the driver, and if it isn't theirs, it's a big fine. This is not protected by HIPAA. And our last story. How I stopped a developer from stealing my land. I live in what used to be a sleepy little town, the kind where you waved at everyone because odds were you went to high school with their cousin. Now it's barely recognizable. Gas stations on every corner, housing developments where pastures used to be, and traffic so bad I could walk faster to the gas station than drive. What used to be pickup trucks and small-town smiles is now overpriced SUVs and people honking if you hesitate at a green light. Anyway, here's the issue. My house sits in the middle of what used to be 230 acres of horse pasture and wildlife reserve. My mom bought the plot over 30 years ago and built the home with her own hands. It's the only home I've ever known. It's where my dad passed away, where my siblings learned to ride bikes, but apparently it's now inconvenient to be a developer. About a year ago, this developer swoops in, buys up everything around us, and tries to act like a mob boss in a shiny truck. Some slick suit shows up one day, doesn't even introduce himself, just launches into this monologue about how the kids of the man who originally sold my mom the land had transferred the rest to them. He said verbatim, "We're putting a road through here whether you like it or not. You can sell or you can get landlocked, your choice." WTF? Then came the offers, laughable lowballs, the kind of numbers that wouldn't buy a trailer on cinder blocks in this market. I refused. That's when the game started. First, they started marking off boundaries on my land, bright orange flags right through our front yard, acting like it was theirs. Then I caught one of their guys with a measuring wheel walking down my driveway. When I told him he was trespassing, he shrugged and said, "We're surveying future construction." I told him he had about 10 seconds to get off my land before he needed a survey for a head injury. The final straw? They started clearing brush along the backside of our fence line. I walked back there and found one of their bulldozers had taken out part of an old pecan tree that my grandmother planted. When I called the sheriff, the guy acted like I was being dramatic. So I did what they didn't expect. I lawyered up. Turns out the original deed to our land included easement rights for access through all bordering parcels. My mom had it notarized and recorded back in the 90s. They couldn't landlock us if they tried. We had guaranteed access rights through what was now their property. And here's the kicker. Not only did they try to build on part of our land, but our original survey and GPS-tagged corner markers we installed 15 years ago showed they were planning a whole row of townhomes overlapping our boundary by 15 feet. My lawyer got a surveyor, pulled the old county records, and confirmed it. We sent them a cease and desist with photos, deeds, and the full legal packet. Then we slapped them with a lawsuit, trespassing, unlawful land encroachment, property damage, pecan tree, and attempted intimidation to coerce a land sale. They tried to settle quietly. We said no, took it to court. The judge was not amused, especially when their smug project manager tried to say we misunderstood the boundaries. Our lawyer pulled out dated Google Earth images that showed the exact fence line had existed untouched for over 20 years. The court ordered them to redraw their development plans at their expense. We were awarded $42,000 in damages. Lawyer asked for $30K. The judge bumped it for intentional overreach. They had to plant 2 mature pecan trees and repair our back fence. They're legally required to provide a paved easement to our home through their fancy new neighborhood, including a privacy wall at their expense so we don't have to see their McMansions. Best part, their original plan called for a gated community. That gate now has to stay open because of our permanent easement access. The Homeowners Association, livid. But that's their problem, not mine. They thought they could bully the last holdout, but they forgot this land has roots. And so do I. If I were you, I'd kick back and watch them scramble to redraw plans around your property like they're playing real-life SimCity. So never underestimate a homeowner who knows their rights, especially when they've got decades of paperwork and a family story backing them up. Kudos. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.